In the city, a thriving metropolis encompassing 1/3 billion souls, a man can change his world as easily as crossing the street. It is a place of a million cultures, the world in microcosm. For some, it is their last hope for survival. For others, it is their playground. And for others yet, it is their hunting ground. Isaac Sarason is a talented hacker, a doctor of applied network theory, trusted employee of British Telecom-Sprint. He lived in a world which 90% of his fellow citizens can only imagine. And he has a problem. His health is failing. His job is on the line. His world is crumbling around him. He wants out. And the street is his only escape. What happens when the life you dreamed of is killing you? What do you do when you find yourself hijacked? Colbyjack.net is proud to present Firmware, Hijacked, written and performed by R.L. Ferguson. Firmware, Hijacked by R.L. Ferguson. Episode 4. 7. Leo helped me down the street. Bread vans, grocery trucks, a lone police cruiser drifted down the street, with only the hum of their tires and the bang of loose doors to mark their passage. To be honest, my vision was messed up bad. The world was blurry, grainy, and washed out at the same time. I distinctly remember the police officer in the passenger seat giving a jaunty two-fingered salute to Leo. And he smiled. Police don't smile. They glower, smirk, and frown. Before that morning, I'd never seen a cop smile in my life. At about the halfway point, Leo leaned me against the glass of Majniashvili's pharmacy. "Can't you stay on your feet?" Leo asked. It struck me strange that his words weren't slurred. He had downed half a liter of vodka and seemed none the worse for it. I must be a real lightweight. I put my palms against the window behind me, lowered my head. The world didn't seem to move as much if I kept my eyes on the sidewalk, and mushed out an affirmation. "Have to pick up a prescription for the missus. Be back in 2 shakes." I leaned against the glass and studied the concrete at my feet. The concrete was old, pitched up in places, the surface worn slick in channels running the length of the block. The number of feet and the years it took to wear those channels, I had no idea. Foot traffic rapidly increased across my patch of sidewalk. Men in heavy woolen jackets and heavy jeans with round woolen hats passed me, lunch pails in hand. Women in heavy dresses and split skirts, knit coats, and multicolored fur caps traveled in gaggles. Heavy red, black, and pink knit bags weighted down with whatever it was working women carried to work. Leo came back, small brown wrap package in his hand. "Ready for bed?" I pushed myself off the window, almost into the passing pedestrians. Leo steadied me. His firm hands directed me toward Georgie's Market and my new home, 12 stories above. The thought of climbing those impossibly narrow steps made me shudder. I kept my eyes on the pavement before me, occasionally reaching for a tree. All along the street grew at random intervals from the concrete, thin-trunked, wide-topped trees. I hadn't noticed them last night. In the early morning light, they served as refuges from the press of foot traffic. About the foot of each tree there was a square of buckling paving stones embossed with the worn outlines of 2 bulky creatures supporting a square between them, with a third creature upon it. 1,000,000 feet in days past had worn them nearly smooth. I couldn't even guess what the beasts were. They weren't men as far as I could determine. At these times, Leo would stand before me, bending his knees to look into my downturned face. When he saw whatever he sought in my face, he'd pull one of my arms over his shoulder and tow me further down the bustling morning street. I don't know when she joined us, but along the way, the runner girl in the coach futon running suit appeared. I became aware of her when she pulled my free arm over her shoulder. My hand brushed her stomach beneath her breast, and I felt her inhale. Her hand took mine. Her hand was smooth and chilled. The chill left her hand quickly. I tilted my head toward her. She turned to face me. I could smell walnuts and vanilla on her breath. She smiled at me and blushed. She turned her head back to our path. She and Leo carried on a long conversation in Georgian. Where Leo's words carried a hint of sharpness and danger, her voice passed through me like a gentle wind, a lullaby written just for me. They talked the rest of the way. The girl sounded shy but sure. Leo sounded concerned but confident. When we arrived at Georgie's market, a truck sat before the door, one set of wheels on the sidewalk. The metal door of the market's basement sat wide open, tempting drunk fools, such as me, to fall down the rough concrete steps. Georgie stood beside the liftgate of the truck, clipboard in hand. He gave us a troubled look, his red clerk's apron tied across his large belly. Leo said something to Georgie in Georgian. Georgie responded with what sounded like a reproach. Leo barked. The girl lowered her head. Georgie turned away, his face red with, what, anger? Frustration? Disapproval? I thought it was disapproval. Who wouldn't disapprove of a new tenant returning home propped up because he was too drunk to navigate without help? That's right, I was the drunken uptowner who couldn't hold his liquor and needed a teenage girl and an old man to steer him home. They propped me up at the side of the hole in the sidewalk. My eyes traced the worn and pitted stairs leading into the market's subterranean storeroom. Vertigo washed over me as my mind rushed through all the ways I could fall down the stairs. A bulky man, with a church with 7 spires tattooed on his left hand, came up the stairs, dragging a dolly behind him. Skulls decorated the knuckles on his right hand. He smiled at the girl as he passed. With much cajoling, Leo and the girl got me down the stairs into the storeroom. We passed shelves of extruded plastic and metal. The path between was barely wide enough for 2. I found myself leaning on the girl. Leo followed behind. My head lolled against hers. I inhaled and smelled violets. I leaned heavily upon the girl, her muscles taut against my side. Beneath the running suit, she was sinew and muscle. She reminded me of a runner I dated in college, Janet. Janet was a marathon and cross-country runner. I was your typical computer major, always linked in, hooked up, always on the net, never aware of what I was missing in the world. She had issues with her transcripts and drugs. I knew my way through the university IT security. We met at an open party. My roommate, Amosa, a Samoan with a major in partying, towed me to it. Back before Jackson University expanded to its current size, there was a row of abandoned warehouses just off campus on 763rd Street. Hulking 10-story buildings where students without grants and the homeless squatted. The papers of the time claimed that upwards of 6,000 families lived in them. It was also where the best parties were held. Up on the 10th floor of 9675-4, 763rd Street, I drank my first beer, followed shortly after by my first hit of acid, and my first head-over-heels affair. The entire floor was one large room with a stage in the center and a bar against the back wall. 1,000 writhing college students in various states of undress and reality moved to the body-slamming beats laying down by the band on the stage, while a laser light show turned the world upside down. Disorientation set in the moment I got off the freight elevator. The bar was stocked with more alcohol and drugs than I knew existed. Amosa set me up with my first beer and then introduced me to Janet. Janet was everything I didn't know I wanted in a woman. She wore a knee-length UV reactive weave sweater dress that sparked and flared as the light show washed across the blurring masses all about us. The weave of the dress was wide enough that I knew she wore nothing beneath. "This is the guy I told you about!" Amosa yelled over the beats. "He's a whiz with computers, virginal about everything else." I blushed. What right did Amosa have to bust my chops in front of this nymph with the carved features? My face blushed as I tried hard not to stare at her taunt, runner's breasts and tight stomach. Her nipples peeked between the weave of the dress. It might have been my imagination, a trick of the light, or it might have been so, but every once in a while, when the light show went off in just the right pattern, I thought I saw a splash of color from her pelvis. A triangle of radioactive blue, or was it toxic waste green, or maybe rutting red, flashed under the right conditions. I tried to look her in the eye, to treat her as something more than an object of sexual desire, but that wasn't happening. It was then I noticed that her shoulder-length hair flashed in the same manner. I shook with arousal as I finished my beer. Janet leaned in close. Her color-changing hair brushed against my ear, across my face. I smelt musk, thyme, and pine. Her eyes were downcast, a smile on her lips. "Amosa told me you're quite a whiz with networks and code and stuff like that." My throat tightened. I couldn't form words. I blurted out something indecipherable. She ran her hand across my computer sciences chest, across my nerd stomach, brushed my belt before bringing her hands up to cradle my face. She pulled me close, her tongue spreading my lips. My body shuddered as she pulled me close. I felt her nipples rub against the fabric of my shirt. I staggered. My body shuddered as she pulled away. I was dazed and confused. This doesn't happen to comp sci majors. Hell, I'd never seen this happen to football players, even the strikers. Not that they invited me to their parties, but I knew they never got in this tight, this fast, with a fox like Janet. I watched as Janet put a slip of paper on her tongue. She closed her mouth around it, gave a wicked smile, and pulled me close for another round of deep tongue action. I felt the paper in my mouth, pushed back beyond my molars, where it threatened to gag me in the moments before it completely dissolved. When we came up for air, I asked, "What was that?" My world focused down to her. There was no one in the world but her and me. The lights flared around us. The tribal beats drove me to reach for her, cupping her small, perfectly shaped breast in my hand. I felt an electric trill run up my spine as she kneaded my flesh. In my ear, she whispered, "Just a hit of acid. My treat to you." Dawn found us in a sleeping bag on the roof. I was in love. Pure, unblemished, perfect, virginal love. She was in love with me long enough to convince me to help her college records and for me to penetrate felony network invasion. She was gone the next day. I should have changed everything back. I didn't. I like to think I was thankful for what she gave me. The truth was simpler. Without her to prod and goad me, I just couldn't do it. It's like I needed someone to push me in order to be malicious. In the basement, the girl and I came to a stop before the battered doors of an elevator. Leo was on his phone, speaking rapid Georgian. The girl turned me around. The world spun. I fell back against the elevator doors. Leo stepped before me, his hands holding my shoulders to the door. "Something just came up. Have to go sort out a mess at home. Nona will see you up to your place." Nona? Who the hell was Nona? I croaked something indistinct to that effect. Leo stared at me. His eyes glanced to the side, in the direction of the girl, every couple of seconds. After about 10 repetitions, Leo's face relaxed. He turned my head to the girl. "This is Nona. She's very strong. Will make a good wife someday," Leo said. He smiled wide and happy. The smile of a predator seeing its young knows how to hunt. "Nona," I slurred. "Nice to meet you." She brought her hand out of her pocket and waved. Was she trembling? Why was she wearing rubber gloves? Did she have them on the whole time? My confusion must have been written across my face, for she gave me a closed-mouth smile. Not a warm smile as from before, more like an effort to control her facial muscles before she did something. But what? Cry? Laugh? I heard a bell sound. The elevator door opened behind me. I fell back into the rough interior of the freight elevator. I landed hard on my ass. My head banged loudly against the back wall. I most definitely saw stars. "Sorry about the bump," Leo said without a hint of sympathy. "You good guy. We let you use freight elevator. Much better than stairs. Be a dear, Nona, and help our good friend to his feet. Nona helped me to my feet. My shirt must have come untucked, for I felt Nona's hand brush the small of my back. Her hands were warm beneath the rubber gloves, and it felt as if she left a bit of warmth behind as her hand moved away. I gurgled thanks to Leo for everything as the elevator door closed, leaving me alone with Nona. By the time we reached my floor, an age later, my knees began rebelling against me. They wouldn't perform the way I wanted. They kept going their own direction. It felt as if they knew something I didn't and wanted to get as far from me as possible. I slumped against the door as I fumbled for my keycard. I missed the slot a dozen times before I felt the warm flesh of Nona's hand come to rest over mine. She guided my hand gently, guiding me to make the connection I failed at time and again. The lock clicked, and I stumbled into the room. Nona guided me to a soft landing on the dilapidated couch. I closed my eyes, letting the darkness take me. I sensed that Nona pulled down the hideaway bed. I felt soft hands guide me the 2 steps from the couch onto the bed. I collapsed face down on the thin but comfortable memory foam surface. Her hand brushed my cheek as she pulled the sheet over me. I smiled. At least I thought I did. Then I heard her walk to the door and out. I passed out thinking, that wasn't so bad. There really are nice people in the world. Firmware, Hijacked, was written and performed by R.L. Ferguson. This work is released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike license. Do what you want with it. Remix it, re-record it, transcribe it, share it. Just don't sell it or change the terms of the license. Your creation must be released under an Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike license. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.